This episode of Dorking Out is brought to you by the Tyrell Corporation. More human than human.
And the number 2. This podcast has a 2-drink minimum. Trust me, we sound a lot smarter and you'll enjoy the podcast more with 2 drinks in you.
Houston, flight is go.
Mila, let's go. SPM, safety contact.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's Dorking Out with Sonia Mansfield and Christopher Allen Smith.
Welcome to episode 68 of Dorking Out, a podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and stories of culture that we love. That means movies and TV, books and podcasts, and everywhere else we find stories that interest us. This is the Spielberg is a Blade Runner and Star Trek Discovery edition of the show. With me today is my co-host, professional writer, and author of The Sonia Show, a chronicle of jokes I have to make about Sonia's blog, Sonia Mansfield.
Hey there.
Hey.
Good one. With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith.
I didn't forget to make that joke. I didn't forget to write it.
In this week's episode, we review Blade Runner 2049, which is the latest installment in the Blade franchise starring Wesley Snipes. I kid, obviously. Margo D from Book versus Movie joins us to talk about one of the long-awaited sequel to Blade Runner, probably the most influential sci-fi movie of all time. And our
wait, all right.
One of the most influential sci-fi movies of all time.
I thought you said probably the most. I apologize.
Sorry.
I apologize. I take it back.
In our second segment, Smith and I talk about the new documentary Spielberg, which aired on HBO on Saturday night. And after watching it, I have a whole new appreciation for the Lost World. Not really. And finally, we end our show with our weekly roundtable discussion about Sunday night's episode of Star Trek Discovery with Jeff Bond and Alexandra August. We have so much to talk about, so let's get this podcast started. Topic 1, Blade Runner 2049. The original 1982 Blade Runner, directed by Ridley Scott, is considered a sci-fi masterpiece. It influenced pretty much every futuristic sci-fi movie that came after it, and it was burned in the brain of a generation of visionary filmmakers like Guillermo del Toro and Christopher Nolan. But at the time of its release, Blade Runner wasn't a box office success. Perhaps if it had been a box office success, we wouldn't have had to wait 35 years for a sequel. But maybe that's a good thing. Blade Runner 2049 is directed by, and I looked this up so I could pronounce it correctly, Denis Villeneuve, who directed one of my favorite recent movies, Arrival, and it stars Ryan Gosling as a Blade Runner who uncovers a huge secret that would disrupt the uneasy relationship between replicants and humans, which leads him to Harrison Ford's Rick Deckard from the original. We're going to talk about the movie spoiler-free for a bit, but we'll probably get into spoilers a little later. But we'll give you guys a heads up, of course. We're not jerks. Joining us to talk about Blade Runner 2049 is one of my favorite podcasting people, Margo D from Book versus Movie. But before we jump into Blade Runner review, I want to ask you both, which one of the Blade Runner cuts is your favorite? This movie's been tinkered with countless times.
I like the 2007 tinkering.
So you like the final cut?
I do like the final cut.
Yeah, that's the one that Ridley Scott had complete control over.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah. What about you, Smith?
I like them all. I mean, they all have something. I accidentally watched in preparation for watching 2049 the original theatrical cut with the narration and everything, and it's still a spectacular movie. Like,
you know what's funny? Everyone craps on the original because they don't like the voiceover narration, but I actually kind of like it because it reminds me of old, like, film noir
right
voiceover narration, so I'm kind of fine with it.
And it's not, and they make it out like, oh, it totally changes the movie. It doesn't. The final cut cuts 2 shots off at the end but it heavily implies what the original theatrical cut kind of voiceover and final 2 shots say anyway. So it's not like it fundamentally changes the meaning of the movie. I mean, so I don't know. I'm all for directors doing what they want, but I'm also one of those people that believes that director's cuts 9 times out of 10 actually make the movie worse rather than better.
Wow.
And I can only think of...
I don't know if I agree with that, but...
No, I don't at all.
I can only think of one director's cut that is head and shoulders above the theatrical cut. But anyway... Is
it Blade Runner?
No.
Is it Blade Runner?
Yeah, I was going to say, is it Blade Runner?
No.
Hello?
It's Blaze Runner.
The voiceover is terrible.
It's Mel Brooks' Blaze
boring.
Runner. So it's the same thing. It's the original cut, the story and the structure and everything is nearly identical. No, the movie I'm talking about is James Cameron's director's cut of The Abyss. Is a completely different movie. But
I haven't seen it.
But it's
I like that.
It's fantastic. Anyway, so yeah, that's where I come down. But they're all good. They're all great. They're all
right.
5 seconds here, 10 seconds here. We took these 2 things off. We took out the voiceover, which granted is not necessary, but it's not. I think the internet and film culture kinds of jumps on these memes sometimes, like, oh, the director's cut, or oh, the original sucks with the narration. We wouldn't have had the love for the movie. We wouldn't have had all these subsequent cuts if there wasn't enough in the original to really connect with people. So, not that I really care.
I might lean towards the director's cut because I feel like that's the one I've seen the most.
Yes, I agree.
I like the director's cut. I don't like the narration at all. Margo, my co-host for Book versus Movie, we both really hate voiceover. It's very rarely done correctly. I mean, I like the original fine. I'm an 80s kid, and I like Duran Duran videos. I like everything that came from Blade Runner, which you see everywhere, from then till now. It changed everything, for sure. But the 2007 version is superior, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's just it's not a movie for me that changes night and day between all the cuts. It gets somewhat better, but it's not like for me the 2007 version is not like a revelation when compared to the theatrical cut. But I think I belabored my point.
And this has been our review of Blade Runner. Join us next week. So, Margo, what did you think of Blade Runner 2049?
I really enjoyed it. I saw it. So recording today, it's Sunday, October 8th, yes?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I saw it at the Brooklyn Alamo Drafthouse. If you were sitting in row 3, seat 4, and a woman throw a napkin into your face because you were using your cell phone during the movie, that was me. Oh,
I thought Alamo had a strict policy about that.
They do have a strict policy, and I threw it in his face, and he looked at me and I said, "That's your one warning. You do it again, I'll throw you out."
Yeah. Good for you.
What did he do?
I don't take any crap. I paid $15. Yeah, I mean, you pay more money. Yeah. So anyway, I just came home. It started at 3:30. I came home a little before 7. I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. I don't know if I understand everything, to be honest with you. I may have to go back and revisit things. But on my way there, I listened to our show about Blade Runner. We talked about the original book, then the movie, and I listened to that there, and I watched the movie and listened to the rest coming back. I'm like, I think I need to go back and see that.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it benefits from... Yeah, I think it would benefit from multiple viewings. That's how I felt when it was over. Like the second it was over, I was like, I need to see it again. I don't think I got everything. And my interpretation was totally different than my friend's interpretation.
Oh.
Which is, who'd you go with and what'd they say?
I saw it with my friend Amanda and my niece Lorelai, who has never seen the original Blade Runner. And I don't know why she agreed to see this one when she hadn't seen the original. But Amanda just had a very different. Yeah, we had a discussion about whether or not Deckard is a replicant, basically.
Oh, okay.
But we could talk about that later in the review.
Yeah.
Smith, what did you think?
I'm wondering if there's a certain class of movies that I get so hyped about beforehand that I actually have to see them twice before I can really talk about it. On a very broad level, it looked amazing. It sounded amazing. Yeah. There were some spectacular scenes. The performances I liked from nearly everyone. But I want to see it again before I make any final judgments, but it seemed like a lot of the themes and
too bad, Smith. This is the podcast of record, and this is your final judgment.
So my reaction is, it's pretty good. No, I'm wondering if there was. I had heard a lot before going into it that this is not just a sequel retread. This is one of the rare sequels that is equal to the original. It takes the original Blade Runner world and expands it to a certain extent and builds on the themes rather than just retreading them. And I don't know. I think I really did enjoy it. I really did like the examination of what it means to kind of be a person, to have some sort of humanity that should be respected and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to when it comes right down to it, I think the original dealt with these themes in a little bit more interesting way. But let me ask you a question. Who do you guys think is the hero of the original Blade Runner?
Oh, it's not Rick.
It's Rutger Hauer's.
See, that's what I'm thinking. But I've talked to a couple people, and they think it's like some weird fan theory I've created. But no, it's definitely Rutger Hauer. It's definitely Roy. It's a slave uprising. Who wants to be a slave? He's the good guy. That's the whole thing. And here, we're introduced right off the bat to Ryan Gosling's Blade Runner character, and it seems as though the themes of slavery and do replicants have souls and everything is going to kind of be pounded on a little bit more in what I think is a nice and accessible and interesting 2017 retread, but there's a lot about alienation, a lot about what people do, what beings do, I would say, when they try to connect with one another, and his love affair with a, computer program, essentially.
Which totally reminded me of the movie Her.
Definitely did.
Oh,
so
me
much.
too.
Yeah.
So much of that.
And I liked it a lot.
Which I'm fine with, by the way, because I like being reminded of Her.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. But the one thing that I will say is I was one of those people that when I watched the original movie, I liked it, but the first time I watched it, I was kind of bored. And Blade Runner was one of those movies that grows on you more and more and more every time you see it. And I have a feeling that Blade Runner 2049, I guess this is my bottom line, Blade Runner 2049 will either do that, or on one or two more viewings, I think this might collapse. In that there's a lot of cool stuff in there. There's a lot of interest. It's one of those movies where everything is firing on all cylinders, but sometimes stuff just doesn't come together. It just kind of melts like cotton candy and rain or something under kind of some close scrutiny. But I haven't absorbed enough of this movie, and I haven't seen it again in order to say definitively one way or another. I will say I was very underwhelmed and very underwhelmed, and I'm not going to say put off, but I don't know, confused, confounded, whatever, with the ending, the whole, the last little moment that we're supposed to feel at the end, the last bit, and let's get into spoilers here in a little bit. This is what I'll say. For me, a lot of things that are wrong or maybe misfiring or misstep with the story can be fixed by a good ending. And there are a lot of movies that can kind of tumble off course from a not so great ending. And I suspect that for me, this is going to end up in the latter category, but I haven't made my final decision yet.
Oh, I love the ending. I don't want to spoil it quite yet. I really love this movie and look forward to seeing it again. And I just love I think I just love this director so much.
Right.
Like similar to Arrival, like I like how like thoughtful the movie is. It's, beautiful to look at. It's asking big questions, but it doesn't necessarily spell out all the answers for you.
Right.
I wrote down that I don't think it's recycling ideas from the first one, but it is like expanding on those ideas. And I think that's really smart. I really like that. I do think it's too long. Yeah. By the way, this is like Sonia's reoccurring thing. Like, it's too long. Like any movie that's like more than an hour, 45 minutes. I'm like, it's too long.
Right.
And
this was 2 hours and 45 minutes, by the way.
Yeah. I really like this movie. And, I think the first one was a lot about like, the fear of our own like mortality and like, how we're created and our meeting our makers and all these things. And I think this one is a lot about like what it means to be human and what does it mean to have a soul. And I really liked it. I think I'm going to love it more as I watch it more. Like, I think I've watched Arrival like 3 or 4 times now. Like every time I watch it, I love it more and more. And I feel like this is going to be one of those movies. And I do want to say that I think Harrison Ford is so good in this movie. Like, he hasn't been this good in a long time. What did you guys think of Harrison Ford?
I loved Harrison Ford. I thought he was wonderful because I didn't like him in the original movie. And it's not his performance. I just think the character was kind of a dud. Rick in the original is not that interesting.
Right.
I mean, he's a total asshole.
Well, having watched it again, and I remember this reaction in the early 90s as the kind of sexual politics have changed between the original now. Rick in the original, he's a flat-out rapist, right? There's no way around it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Sean Young, he pushes her around, and you could see it on her face. She didn't know he was going to do that.
Right.
He just, like, being in the scene just felt like doing it. And back then, that's what you did. I mean,
yeah.
This is the same weekend that Harvey Weinstein basically got fired for being a creep, which everybody knew he was a creep for 25 years. But basically, yes, life is, circumstances have changed. Our thoughts about things have changed, about sexual politics and consent and things like that. So, yes, right. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So
I just think that I don't know of any other actor who's called upon to revisit his most iconic characters as often as Harrison Ford.
Right.
Whether
Nobody.
Right.
Indiana Jones or Han Solo or Rick Deckard. And I just think this was his best one, like his best return. Like
right.
I feel like a lot of movies with Ford lately, he's kind of smirky or cold and distant. And I just didn't he seemed so sad and, his emotions are just like right there on his face. And, I don't want to talk about the ending, but I think the ending just really like hit me
Hold on for a second.
In the chest.
Somebody is breathing into their mic like crazy.
Is that me? I'm sorry.
It might be. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I don't know if it was me. Maybe Harrison Ford gets me all hot and bothered still.
It might be.
I think I was holding up by accident. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Is there's a main big thread in this movie, and this is in all of the posters, not even the trailers, that Harrison Ford is all over this. So I don't think it's a stretch to say there's a question of what happens. A central question to this movie is what happened to Rick and Rachel after the events of the original Blade Runner. But I will see the way that he reacted and dealt with Rachel and his kind of seeming pining for her when there was that weird rape scene in the original. It just seems like kind of their whole relationship is built on this really weird dynamic. And maybe I should just kind of get past that because I don't think either the original movie or this one is conceiving of that relationship in that way. but it was a lot of his kind of bittersweet sadness at the fate of Rachel, or the fate of their relationship, I should say. I don't know. It put a weird pang in my...
Yeah, I don't think the movie sees the relationship the way we see it when we rewatch that original. They see two people who fell in love.
Right. Yeah, and they
whether
did.
Whether or not we want to let that slide.
Yeah. Well, I guess we need to. That is one thing that I'm wondering. I'm going to jump on something you said a second ago, Sonia. Is I did think this is a movie that was, I don't want to say hamstrung, but if it had been 25 minutes shorter, which it could have been in some of those scenes, there are an awful lot of scenes where we watch Ryan Gosling kind of sit quietly and think as the music swells.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good, but it's kind of like, I know what he's thinking. We can see what he's thinking, but we're going to look at this shot for 10 more seconds anyway. It's kind of like the information has been set. We've seen the beauty of the city and the futurescape, but still we're going to have these big sweeping shots and whatever. And it's great, but I think for me in the last 25, 30 minutes, it really started to bleed out in a way, the momentum, even though I brought my son, Delano, to see this, and he had not seen the original, but he was blown away by this movie. And there's a kind of the climactic fight, I would say, was pretty spectacular and it was great.
Your son, Delano, I think how old is he? He might be the same age as my niece.
He is
15.
15. Del, if your dad is wrong about this, don't email the show. He is 15.
Yeah, because Lorelai also had not seen the original and thought this movie was really good, and now it makes her want to go back and watch the original, and she wants to read the book.
Right.
Oh, good.
Yeah, she loves to do that. She likes to see the movies, and then she reads the books.
What did you guys think of Jared Leto's Neander Wallace character, who is essentially kind of the Tyrell Corporation stand-in for this movie, the super tech trillionaire that is making all the new replicants? And what did you think of his performance?
I enjoyed it. I don't know. I like Jared Leto. He doesn't bother me too much.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I thought he was fine. I thought he was totally fine and totally believable. I enjoyed it.
Well, okay, let me ask you this then. What did you guys think of the character? Because for what the character was doing, yeah, it's not bad. That's kind of what you do. That character, I think, alone among all of the characters, seemed to be really, I don't know, really just like they were pushing and trying for something profound and some creepy, crazy Colonel Kurtz type, super trillionaire, mad scientist type.
Right.
But I thought it kind of got in its own way, and that character just felt like it was trying way too hard for what was going on there. But
I think that's what a lot of people think about Jared Leto in general.
Right.
I agree on that. Yeah.
That he tries too hard. I like Margo. I actually like him. I appreciate that he's trying, but I thought he was good in the movie. I thought everybody was good in the movie. I thought this was like a really great role for Ryan Gosling, because I know that he's been kind of accused in the past of being kind of, I don't know, cold.
Yeah.
I guess. And I think this was like a really good use of that.
Right.
I liked, I'm not going to remember her name, who played his girlfriend, Ana de Armas.
Right.
She was good.
As his girlfriend, or
Joy,
his operating system or whatever.
His virtual girlfriend. And then I liked Sylvia Hawkes. Is that her name? Hoax?
Yes.
As Louvre, and she was the baddie. I thought she was a badass. I loved her. Yeah. She was amazing in every scene that she was in. I want to take kickboxing classes with her. She could do a kick like nobody's business.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing. I was like, damn,
girl. You were doing Tae Bo a lot, weren't you?
Somebody trained.
That's right. Yeah, no, she was a really affecting villain. She was really fantastic, and I don't know. There's
and an equal match, if not even stronger than him. I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely.
right.
He just happened to get a little lucky, I think, in that fight.
Or something. Yeah, and that I don't know. That was seemed to be the question. Is there's a question. One Robin Wright's character kind of questions whether or not Ryan Gosling has a soul, and I don't know. Maybe I'm looking for meaning where there isn't any. But it kind of like it was pretty obvious the whole time he had a soul. While I'm not sure. Love did seem very not mechanical, but just very like all of the more human emotions had been somehow programmed or bred out of her. She just seemed almost like a shark moving through those scenes.
Or maybe it has something to do with like nature versus nurture,
Maybe, yeah.
He gets more humanity as the story progresses.
That could be it. Yeah, that could be it.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just going back to the original material. The original story was called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?"
Right.
And so he's in the book. There's no such word as Blade Runner.
Right.
They're androids. So, and in the end, spoiler, I'm going to spoil away right now. No, they don't. They just kill and move and kill and move. They don't really form attachments. So so I thought that was kind of interesting. Like in these movies, they really try to give them a soul and everything. So that's like a differentiation from the source material. I'm fine with it, but to tell you guys the truth, I would really like that original material to be realized. And I think it'd probably have to be an animated film to do it properly. But I would really look forward to seeing that someday. I mean, I was looking for the Easter eggs. The only Easter eggs you get from the original material are the animals. There aren't very many animals in there, but when there are, it's special.
Right.
Because in the original material, animals are gone. They've been eliminated. So if you have a live, real animal, it's a big deal. It's a status symbol. So the fact that Rick has a dog that looks like a real dog, it's a big deal.
Right.
So anyway, that's me digressing. I'm sorry.
I love the scene too, where like he pours a little bit of the whiskey on the ground.
Oh, the whiskey for the dog. How great was that dog? I'm an animal lover.
I love how, or at least in my theater, it seems as though you could feel half of the dog lovers were like, oh, look at him, he's taking care of his dog. And the other half of the dog lovers were, what a monster. Look at what he's doing to that poor dog. Well, okay, I guess maybe now, because it could just be me.
Yeah, can we talk a little about some spoilers?
Yes.
Should we give the spoiler tone?
We're going to the spoiler tone in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Sonia, why don't you start off with the spoilers? There's a big thing that I want to talk about, but...
Well, I just want to... So, I want to know, do you guys think that Deckard's a replicant?
No.
Yes.
You think so? Because I don't think he is either. That's so funny.
I don't know. I guess because of the source material, but maybe you're right. I mean, I don't know. I've just been taking it from Ridley Scott's version for so long.
Yeah.
And I should have read the book again before I did this interview with you guys, but I'm slacking. I have a million books I always have to be reading at any time for my podcast. But just listening to the show again today, I believe he was a replicant in the book too. And I've always just taken him that way. So the fact that in the movies they made him more and more emotional, especially Harrison Ford, I think he was like, you know what, y'all, I got the asshole edit last time.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to be giving and kind and feel feelings and express emotion. And I was really happy that he got to do it.
Yeah, well...
Because, so my friend, when the movie was over, she's like, Jared Leto's character says he is. And I was like, yeah, but I think he's just messing with him. I don't think he is a replicant. I think he's human.
He's lived a long time.
Yeah, he has lived a long time. I think that's one of the things in that scene with Deckard and oh my God, what's his name? I just had it here right in front of me. Wallace, thank you. That Wallace basically says both things. Didn't you think that you were bred for that moment and you were supposed to program to do this? And also, well, maybe not. I think he was messing with him. He was kind of going around and around. But Blade Runners in this version are all replicants. So it really, so the question of how much of a stretch is it to believe that the Blade Runners in Deckard's time were replicants?
Right.
Not that much of a stretch, but I don't know. For me, the question of is he or isn't he is not as interesting as the kind of broader questions of, of Roy or Ryan Gosling's character. Now that I think about it, it is kind of weird that I'm more interested in all of the artificial or definitely replicant characters in these movies than I am in most of the humans. But anyway. All right, so the end. I want to talk about the end.
Okay.
So the fate of Deckard and Rachel's girl is she works for the Wallace's corporation, making memories. That's it. This special baby that they went to all this trouble to shield and save and protect. She just, I guess, through HR, got a job.
She's been hiding in plain sight.
She's been hiding in plain sight for what? It's kind of like there's all this portentous, maybe, hints that, the rebellion is coming. We're going to fight for our own. We're finally going to, throw off the shackles of oppression, and we're going to take our place among the humans, and we're going to use this baby to help us to show the world. And she's, like a mid-level tech.
She's a bubble girl.
She's a bubble girl.
She's a bubble girl. She
that's
can't
right.
get out there.
It would be like finding out the savior of humanity is some middle manager in the Xbox division of Microsoft in Seattle.
That's probably true.
And that's it. Oh God, help us all. So what did you think of that? Like, and I think part of it is, this is, now that I'm having to articulate it, I think that's the problem I'm having, is the question of replicant rights and replicant souls and what it is to be human seems to get shoved aside at the end for, oh, look, here's Deckard finally meeting his daughter. Isn't that nice, kind of thing. It seemed like a flat note when you're asking all these big questions and going in all these grand directions. This kind of, hey, Dad, that's it kind of thing.
I didn't take it as that at all. I think
nor did I.
Ryan Gosling has his moment, his dying scene out there, and I think after everything he's done to bring Deckard to his daughter, I think it shows that he does have humanity, he does have a soul, and I think that scene also goes a long way towards showing that Deckard isn't a replicant with his reaction to seeing his daughter.
Right. Yeah.
But I love that scene. I love that, like, he puts his hand up and, like, the tears in his eyes. And,
me too.
Like, it just hit me. Like,
I love how rough he looks.
Yeah.
He looks his age.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's been through some stuff, and he traveled a long way to see his daughter finally. And I got very emotional looking at that.
Yeah. And I love Harrison Ford. I have a huge soft spot for him. And I felt like that moment also was just this huge reminder that he's a really good actor. And I was like, he needs some good stuff. Can we, get him something other than an Indiana Jones or a Han Solo, like, instead of revisiting something he's already done.
I think at this point,
let's get something else for Harrison Ford.
It's pretty obvious he doesn't want anything else. He's a guy.
I think the same way. He's a stoner.
He could have had.
He's taking it easy.
That's right. He could have had any role he wanted to in the last 20 years, and we've seen the roles that he's picked and the movies he's actually made. He's fine. I think he's fine being. I don't know. I think he was kind of stunted he rocketed to stardom so quickly that he kind of got used to that level and wouldn't do anything more interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, Sonia, I think we were talking about Tom Cruise a week or two ago. Or no, I guess we never actually went on mic with that. But when I think about the choices Tom Cruise has made over the last 20 years or 30 years, and I think about the choices that Harrison Ford has made, I don't know. I think Tom Cruise is, for as much guff as he gets, he's been choosing a lot more interesting roles.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I'd rather see something with Harrison Ford.
That's true.
Anyway.
Me too.
I understand that.
I agree.
I hear you. So what? All right. This is the question that Sonia loves above all others. What would you guys give this on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would give it an 8.
I second that emotion. Also an 8.
You know, I'm with you. I would give it an 8. I suspect that, you know, there's two ways to go from here. Is I'll watch it again, or for me, there's 2 ways to go. I'll watch it again and it'll drift down, or I'll watch it again and like a lot of great movies, it'll drift up. But yeah, I would give it an 8. 8. So that's a pretty fantastic score for this. For a movie like
absolutely.
this.
You need to see it on a big screen, by the way. I really feel strongly about that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Margo.
beautiful to look at. I think
Absolutely.
you know the cinematography is Roger Deakins.
Yes. Who
needs to win an Oscar for this. It's just a beautiful movie.
Needs to win an Oscar for this, and then he needs to go back a couple of years and pull the Oscar out of whoever won when he was nominated for Skyfall, because how he did not win for Skyfall, it's a crying shame. So is there anything else that we want to talk about when it comes to Blade Runner 2049?
If you see it at Alamo Drafthouse and you take out your phone, I will throw my napkin at you so fast.
As you should.
Thank you.
So what did the guy do? Like, what was his...
He immediately put his phone away. His friend sitting next to him started cracking up like, yeah, dude, you can't do that here.
That's right.
Asshole. Sorry.
Unacceptable.
Yeah. He immediately like shrugged his shoulders and like hugged, and then he took off right away. Like as soon as the movie was over, he was out of there. He didn't want to confront me. He didn't want anything. And my friend Laura, shout out to Laura who's listening right now.
Hi,
she
Laura.
cracked up. She loved it. Hi, Laura. Yes. She loved it. She's like, thank you.
Cool. Good. Thank you for fighting the good fight. Sonia, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say we should mention that you can find Book versus Movie on Facebook and Twitter. And you could find Margo on Twitter at Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Yep.
And
reach out,
Margo,
say hi.
Yeah, and Margo also co-hosts one of my favorites called the Best Neighbors podcast, which I super love.
The Skype dropped out there for a second. The what Neighbors podcast?
Oh, sorry. The Best Neighbors podcast.
Thank you so much. My friend Erin and I, we get together every week and we just talk about pop culture. We've been neighbors for 20 years and she's one of my best friends. We call it the Best Neighbors podcast. And we just kind of, what we say, shoot the shit. I know you don't like to curse, but that's what we do every week. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. We mentioned you on our new episode, by the way. So there you go.
Fantastic.
I'm honored.
Look at that. Cool. Well, thank you for coming, and I'm sure we will have you on again soon.
We're going to be pestering you again.
That's right.
Please, anytime. I love talking to you guys.
No good deed goes unpunished. All right. And with that, I guess we are on to our next subject. On Sunday night, HBO premiered Susan Lacey's new documentary on the films and life of Steven Spielberg, who needs no introduction beyond this. Steven Spielberg is the director of Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Empire of the Sun, Jurassic Park, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, Amistad, AI, Artificial Intelligence, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can, and Lincoln. For me, Spielberg is the most important creator who has been working while I have been alive. Sonia,
yes.
What are your thoughts on Steven Spielberg and Lacey's documentary?
Meh. No, I'm just kidding. No, I really like the documentary. Of course, it's like a great way to watch a bunch of clips of Spielberg movies, and he's made so many amazing movies that I mean, really, it could have just been 4 hours of clips from Spielberg movies, and I would have been like, cool. I would have totally watched it. No, I liked it because one of the things I super love about Spielberg is, I mean, he's made a wide range of movies. Like we're talking, you know, and whether it's about like the Holocaust or war or aliens or a shark that, you know, a giant man-eating shark, it always feels real. And like, I always feel like I can connect with it no matter how outrageous it is.
Right.
Or not outrageous, you know, even if it's like a real thing, like you feel like you're there, like, and that's one of the things I think is so awesome about Spielberg. And I honestly, like, I don't feel like I know a lot about Spielberg's personal life. So kind of a lot of the personal stuff in this was new to me.
Okay.
Like, I didn't know the stuff about his parents and like their divorce and kind of that influence it had on him. And I love seeing the clips of his homemade movies from his childhood. I thought those were amazing. So I feel like I learned a lot. Did you learn anything you didn't know? Because you're such a big fan.
I don't think I did. And I agree with something earlier you said. You know, this seems like an excuse to just watch a bunch of clips from a bunch of Spielberg movies, and you're kind of right. And that is a fantastic thing. This was 2 hours and 45 minutes, I think, 2.5 hours. So there's an awful lot in there, but he has had such a ridiculously wide and varied and spectacular career that it was a lot of fun. But for the actual documentary part, talking about his life and the influence of his life on his work, I thought was pretty underwhelming. But it could just be that, you know, like if you read a whole book on somebody and then you watch a 2 hour documentary on their life, it's kind of like, you're probably not going to see much.
What I wanted was, there's a segment in the documentary where they talk about the quote unquote movie brats.
Right.
Which is like Coppola, De Palma, Lucas, Scorsese, Spielberg, like all these guys hanging out together.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's that documentary? Like that one I would watch. Like I mean, I watched this one too, but I would love to see that one because I love how they have interviews with all of these guys in it. And I was like, it could have just been 2 hours of that. Like, hey, we used to all hang out. We totally supported each other's work. We read this, we did that. Like, I didn't know that Lucas like did some unit shooting on Scarface.
You mean Spielberg?
I'm sorry, who did I? Sorry, yes,
Lucas.
Spielberg. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
De Palma, that was interesting.
You know, stuff like that. I was like, that's so cool. That's so fun. You know, I wanted more of that. To be honest, like, not that the other stuff wasn't as interesting. It's just, as someone who really loves movies, I was super interested in the movie brats segment.
Yeah, that was interesting. You know, they recounted the tale of Lucas showing an early cut of Star Wars to all of those, you know, Coppola, De Palma, Spielberg. I don't know if maybe Scorsese. And Spielberg was the only one that liked it.
Right.
And Brian De Palma famously kind of lit him on fire. And who laughed last. What is interesting is watching this, it's kind of like, well, Lucas has kind of left filmmaking. De Palma may as well have left filmmaking. Coppola may as well have left filmmaking. Yeah.
What's the last movie De Palma made? He's made good movies.
He's made good movies, but he's also made several just complete embarrassments. But what I was going for is, it's very interesting that there are essentially the two left standing are Scorsese and Spielberg.
Right.
I mean, Spielberg is still making movies that are getting recognized and awards consideration and very audience pleasing. I was a little, I shouldn't say irritated, but I love Spielberg, and I will defend him as, he is my number one example of how you can meld crowd pleasing and audience engaging entertainment with big important thoughts and feelings and questions, and really do something that's both good and fun, or at least interesting and satisfying to watch, while at the same time not completely shying away from the bigger, thornier questions. They had a pretty interesting discussion of Munich as a response to 9/11 and War of the Worlds as a response to 9/11. But I thought a lot of this documentary was kind of like, well, I'm just a kid at heart, and I just believe in America, and I just love movies, and here's what I did on this movie, and here's what I did on that movie, and I love movies. He seemed to be very, like we were not really scratching the surface with him.
Right. Well, so that's one of the things I was wondering. They have access to Spielberg, and they're interviewing Spielberg, and I'm wondering, along with that cooperation, did that mean like there was never any like criticism really of Spielberg, which is fine. Like maybe he's just an all around good guy. Like I'm not looking for them to like dig up a bunch of dirt on Spielberg, but it is a really like sunshiny portrait.
Yes, it is. And that's the thing is, and I agree, the old journalist in me kind of rebelled against some of the strictures of journalism sometimes, because sometimes you do not want to tell both sides of the story. To get some idea of what somebody is, you have to kind of see the world from their side, see the world in their most idealized way, to understand the picture that they have in their head that fuels them as they go and they make their movies or whatever. So I completely understand the worth of a documentary like this, told from Spielberg's point of view, about Spielberg's ideas, feeding into Spielberg's movies. So I got that. But unfortunately, I think you're right. There is a much more interesting. You know what? I'm almost thinking what, like a Ken Burns style 10-hour documentary about the Hollywood brats of that era, where you would get kind of a movie by movie examination of each one of them as they went through.
My gosh, I would love to watch that.
Essentially kind of like this would be the Spielberg episode almost. But then would also have people kind of critiquing them or not going after their movies, but looking at them.
Well, I mean, they even talk about, like, they really only talk about 1941.
Right.
Like they don't talk about like, hey, nobody liked Hook, or
I know,
hey, they don't even mention The Lost World, or things like that. Like it is 100%. Yeah.
There's a lot there. It's funny when I was typing
Terminal,
out the things. Yeah, when I was typing out the things here, it's like, I was trying to kind of type out his best movies. I was thinking, wow, they didn't mention Always. They didn't mention. They didn't mention The Terminal. They didn't mention a lot of stuff,
which is fine, because at 2 hours and 45 minutes, like I don't want them spending another like 10 minutes on The Terminal. I don't care. But at the same time, like surely the fact that those movies didn't connect with audiences meant something to him, or maybe influenced his next project, or maybe it didn't. And maybe they just say that, hey, I didn't care that The Terminal didn't connect. I super love it, and it didn't impact me at all, or I don't know. But after watching it, was there any movie that you were like, oh, I need to watch that again now?
God, what's really funny?
Or was it all of them?
No. One, it was kind of all of them. And two, it was Catch Me If You Can, which we've talked about previously.
Yeah. Which you've watched already like a million times.
Exactly, which I've watched already a million times. It's like Jaws, saw that a while ago. Close Encounter, saw that several weeks ago. Don't really need to see that again. Raiders, I've seen a bazillion times. Actually, E.T. I'd like to see E.T. again, because that is such a special, fantastic... Empire of the Sun, I would like to see again.
Yeah.
And here's the answer that's going to get me divorced. Not The Color Purple. The Color Purple is my wife's single favorite movie of all time.
Really?
And I think, yes. And I think for me, I'm not going to say it's my least favorite movie, but it's... God, you know what?
That's so weird, because I was like, how do you revisit The Color Purple?
She's had an interesting life. Let's just say that. It connects on many levels. It can, and that could be the thing. is I don't mean to run down The Color Purple. It's just it connects on many levels, and there's a lot of things about those experiences that I just don't find interesting. Although I know that they are extremely valuable to people who love that movie. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, I'm the guy that talks about big art whatevers, and then I talk about how much I love Raiders of the Lost Ark and don't like The Color Purple. I
really need to. I need to revisit Close Encounters. It's been a while since I've seen it, and this made me really want to revisit. And I think I should revisit Munich as well.
Yeah, I want to watch Munich as well. And yeah, Close Encounters.
Like, I don't think I've seen Munich since I saw it in the theater. So
yeah,
it's time.
I need to see that again. It is a fantastic movie. And they were showing kind of a lot of clips last night, and it's definitely something. And that's the thing, is that it's a very, they explain in the documentary, it's a very ambivalent movie about the questions of, when somebody does you a great injury, how far do you go to kind of right the injury? How far do you go for protection? How far do you go for revenge, if at all? How far do you go for vengeance, if at all? And if you go that far, and if you show everybody in the world who's boss, what's going to happen on the day after? Like, it talks about the cycle of violence and how we have to. But it, I think sometimes people blame that movie for not having answers, and how Spielberg kind of plays around with questions, but he doesn't really answer them. But those are the questions as old as humanity, and I don't think it's fair to.
Hey, you need to spell it out for us.
Yeah, Hey, you need to solve this intractable human problem of human violence, and make sure you do it in a Hollywood-friendly 2-hour movie, because we've got a theater to clean.
Yeah.
And we got to get the next audience in. So snap to it, Spielberg. So yeah, I did think this documentary played out like a, one of those sizzle reels they play at the beginning of like the Kennedy Center honors, where they're gonna where it's gonna be like, look at how great this person is. And one of the things that did impact me is when you take his movies. I think I might have said this when it comes to John Williams and his music, but definitely with Steven Spielberg, is when you take his movies and put them back to back, it's insane. It is insane.
Yeah.
The career this guy has had. He's had the career of 3 or 4 of the most successful filmmakers going at any one time, all at once. Like, if you pull out 5 movies from his career, he's James Cameron.
Yeah. Nobody's had this kind of career.
Right. If you pull out 5 other movies from his career, he's Christopher Nolan. If you pull out 5 other movies from his career, he's, James Mangold. If you pull out 5 other movies, he's in some ways the best Oscar bait director of all, going. He's the best action film director of the last 40 years. He's the best children's movie director of the last 40 years. He's the best topical director of the last 40 years, with like Bridge of Spies, and now coming out with this the Post,
the Pentagon Papers.
Yeah, the stories on the Pentagon Papers that's coming out in December, which I'm very excited about.
Oh my God, that's all for me. It's all for me. I think it's bananas that he made Schindler's List and Jurassic Park in the same year.
Oh yeah,
Can you think of like 2 more different movies? Like, come on.
No,
and they're both really good movies.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You know what? That's the thing.
It's not like he made Schindler's List and he made Hook. It's like he made 2 really great movies.
Right. He made the most profitable action movie of the 90s. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Jurassic Park went to number 1 of all time, and stayed there until Titanic. And in the same year, his other movie swept the Academy Awards.
Right. It's just bananas.
Yeah, no, it's truly insane.
I'm wondering, is a documentary like this, though, is it for someone who is only like kind of, yeah, I like movies?
I guess it is.
Or is it for people who, because I don't feel like it's really for people who like really like love movies. Like, you know, like I've already heard all the stuff about Jaws and,
right,
you know, all that like this wasn't like, that part wasn't really new to me. And I keep thinking like, oh, is this for like my mom, you know, who's like, yeah, I like movies, you know, and then watches it and goes, oh yeah, he did make a lot of good movies. That was fun.
Oh, hold on. Stop. Yes. First, yes, Sonia. I think you're right 100%. Second, The Color Purple is not even close to my least favorite Spielberg movie. There's a Spielberg movie out there that we did during the life of this podcast that I was so underwhelmed by. I know what it is. Completely forgot about it. And that is the BFG. Yeah. The big friggin' giant. I think the initials mean something else, but I don't care. Oh! Then there's also Warhorse. Yeah, shoot. Now that I think about it.
I did not see.
Oh, holy smokes. I did not like Warhorse at all. No, in any way.
So I remember seeing the trailer for Warhorse and I was like, that movie is not for me. Not for me. Like, it was going to make me cry just watching the preview.
Yeah.
So, like, I can't deal with movies that star animals. I just can't. We've talked about this before. And Warhorse was like, it's got the word war and it's got the word horse. This isn't going to go well. I'm not watching this.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, it was, holy smokes. Yeah, exactly. So his two least favorite. So I liked Color Purple enough at least to remember it. I forgot Warhorse.
Well,
BFG and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
That'll go on their DVD cover. I like The Color Purple enough to remember it. Christopher Allen Smith.
That's funny. Yeah, he did Munich and War of the Worlds in the same year.
See, that's crazy.
He does this. In 93, he did Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. In 97, he did The Lost World and Amistad. All right. Then he did, in 2002, he did Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can. In 2005, he did War of the Worlds and Munich. God, he really moves through these movies.
Yeah.
So.
Fascinating.
Anyway. Speaking of, is, so I guess, or where I'm coming down is, it's a good movie. Yeah, it's fine. It's
a perfectly fine documentary. It's a great way to watch a bunch of clips of Steven Spielberg movies, and they're great movies. So enjoy.
Now we are at our weekly status check of Star Trek Discovery. Returning today to talk about Star Trek Discovery Episode 4, The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry. Is my favorite critic, Jeff Bond. He's the author of several books, including The Music of Star Trek, The Art of Star Trek, The Kelvin Timeline, as well as a forthcoming book on Seth MacFarlane's The Orville. Jeff Bond, real quick, are we getting Season 2 of Orville?
Are we going to see Season 2 of Orville? I believe that they are optimistic, and I know that at least one episode from the first season is held back, so they're going to have at least one episode of Season 2 somewhere.
Interesting. All right.
But that's all I know.
Okay. Also joining us is Alexandra August, one of the quickest, funniest pop culture commentators we know. You may know her from her fantastic Game of Thrones podcast, as well as from her writing for Geek Magazine. If you don't, it is your lost dummy. Also, starting last week, I believe that you have a new podcast coming out. Would you like to describe that in this specific segment?
Yes, actually. my co-host on Got Thrones, the Game of Thrones podcast, Johnny Kolazinski, and I met when we were, I think, like maybe 12 or 13 in community theater, and bonded over the fact that we both loved Star Trek. And 20 years later, we finally that relationship is finally coming to fruition, and we now have a Star Trek podcast that it surrounds Star Trek Discovery called The Disco Trek. Yep. We record Monday nights, and so new episodes are up Tuesday morning. We are currently releasing those episodes under our Got Thrones feed, just because it takes a minute. We have been deciding to do this for 20 years, but didn't really get around to discussing anything until about 3 weeks ago. So we're still working out art and things like that. So right now, if you're curious about hearing a more in-depth, like usually like 90-minute discussion of a Star Trek Discovery episode, as opposed to these more petite and brief discussions,
yes.
Then please, like, you can check out Got Thrones, a Game of Thrones podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, and we'll release episodes there. All of our back episodes are there, and then probably next week we will get Disco Trek its own stream on podcast aggregators. So
Disco Trek needs its own theme song.
Yes, it does.
I know. I have been furiously searching disco versions of the Star Trek theme song, and surprise, surprise, the internet is a wealth of.
This does not surprise me.
Yeah,
yes.
It was not difficult to find options.
Cool. Yes, we've discussed having larger discussions of Star Trek on here, but I believe our latest episodes have been breaking the 2-hour mark. So we figured, you know what? If we gotta focus somewhere. I gotta shut up, so our episodes can be somewhat manageable. But along those lines,
shut up, Smith.
Yeah. What did everybody think of episode 4?
I'm enjoying these brilliant titles. First of all, I don't know if it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek nod to some of the more elaborate titles we got on DS9 in the original series, but I like the fun that they seem to be having with it, and I like the sort of ambitious drama they're going for. It has yet to bug me. We'll see if that lasts.
Oh, keep going, Jeff.
I was a little less than lukewarm on this one. I loved the third episode. I thought the writing was really sharp in it, and the setup of the characters and relationships I thought was terrific and had a lot of promise. It seemed like a huge jump in quality from the 2 pilot episodes. Agreed. This one, it was pushing forward a lot of the ideas from the last episode. And I like some of what was done with it. I think this started to fall prey to what a lot of people have been grousing about, way before this show started, which was kind of the idea that it was a lot of style over substance and, flash over substance. I felt in particular, I've been a big defender of the look of the Discovery spaceship, and I think it's a great design. I like the kind of origins of it, as this Ralph McQuarrie, Ken Adam design from the 70s Star Trek movie that was never made. But and I think I'm willing to roll with the whole spore drive idea, and the idea of like an organic drive is a cool idea, and what they did with kind of fitting this creature that was found in the last episode into that idea, I thought itself was a cool idea, but in playing all that out, having to me, like they've somehow switched around the idea of the organic drive with this kind of pizza cutter look of the spaceship, and having the disc primary hull.
I liked that. I thought that was cool.
I
thought it was cool too.
It is cool, but having this thing to kind of just turn into this like Rube Goldberg machine when it goes into warp drive, it doesn't like offend me, but I'll tell you that when I watch some of these things, I can just see people just screaming. Because there's a whole contingent of fandom that just devotes itself to figuring out how these things work and what every part you see in the outside of a starship actually does, and it's very difficult to make sense of the idea that the inside of this disc is spinning. You have windows on the outside that aren't moving. So is everyone on some giant roller coaster ride inside the spaceship when this happens?
That sounds awesome. I thought it only spun when they activated the spore drive, which I had my own issues with because they kept using the term jump. And I spoke with both Mark Altman and Ed Gross this weekend at New York Comic Con, and they both described the third episode as a really good episode of Battlestar Galactica. So it was just kind of hilarious to me that they were like, "Oh, we can jump, and we don't know where we're going to jump." I'm like, yeah, I know, that's how jump drives work on Battlestar Galactica. Like, you have to need a really sophisticated computer to make the calculations, or else you can't predict where you're going to go, and you could jump into a sun, which is literally what happens to them. But that aside, I thought the ship only spun when they used the spore drive. Did it also do it when they went to warp?
No, I don't think it does when they go to warp, which is good. What I liked about the story, and which I think is classic Star Trek, is the idea that Burnham is ordered to research the creature. Which is, seems to be very dangerous and predatory. She's ordered to research its uses as a potential weapon, and what she does is try to understand what it really is and what it's really about, which is not what people think it is, and that is classic Star Trek. And I really liked her scenes with Saru and how she uses Saru's, instincts to be able to sense a predator, to prove that this thing actually isn't a natural predator. That's all great. My problem with it is I would have liked it a lot more if they would have spent the whole episode dealing with that challenge and that mystery. And instead, there's more scenes with the Klingons. Which I thought were well acted.
Yeah, you didn't enjoy the Klingon romantic comedy.
That was
I mean,
shall we uncouple?
I know. Out during the Klingon scenes, and you can do it because they play so slowly. Just as long as you read on the level of a fifth grader, you can stay well ahead of what they're trying to do, but to me, it took up a lot of time that I would have much rather spent on this ship. Kind of drawing those out. I thought they missed an opportunity to have some big, dramatic impact in Burnham's discovery. And we have, there's a lot of Game of Thrones things in this episode, that all the, Klingon stuff is very Game of Thrones, with all the houses and plotting going on there. And then, of course, we have a major character death, which the producers were all hinting about. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to say who it is, but that, to me, it's like, okay, that was surprising. I didn't expect the character to die, but we haven't spent enough time with this character for it to have any impact other than, I thought that was going to be a recurring character.
Right.
Yeah,
well, yeah.
We already got Michelle Yeoh. Michelle Yeoh was pretty surprised. Like, to me, I mean, I guess I could have telegraphed it. I just really didn't want to because I like Michelle Yeoh so much. And then watching the first two episodes, Georgia was by far my favorite character, over Burnham tenfold. So it was surprising and sad. But to lose, I mean, can we talk about spoilers on this one? To lose Rika Sharma, to lose, I think, Landry, was her name, right?
Yeah, Commander Landry.
Yeah,
that was
Landry. We
Yeah.
hardly knew your name.
That's right.
Literally, I mean, well, Rika Sharma, like, and not to be hyperbolic, like, she was a pretty pivotal character in Battlestar Galactica, and to put her on Star Trek kind of gave that some weight for me, just because she was part of that kind of iconic show. And just to have this character be really underserved and then lost in the 4th episode in a really stupid freaking way.
So stupid.
Like,
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Like, come on now.
That was totally like, we need to move the plot forward. Let's have one of our characters make a decision that they would never make.
That's right.
know,
It's a very,
you know,
it's a very
it's like,
Darwin
let's just-
Award plot.
hey,
Or
yeah,
Seriously.
let's just open the door and shoot at it, even though we know the skin is indestructible. It'll be
And it
fine.
killed like an entire
What
ship
could
of
happen,
people.
you guys?
Like,
well, it could come out and kill you, which it
Yeah.
did.
yeah. And
So-
then it will help you rescue a colony.
That's right. Well, yeah, I was a little.
You know what? I like that part.
I did,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of dope.
I hear what you're saying about Commander Landry, and I was, you know, we described this as a major death, but it's a death. I don't know, because of all the reasons that we've just talked about, I don't know if it was really a major death. It was, you know, it doesn't
I don't
have.
think that there's, and it's too bad because the last episode really hints that there's more going on with her character, that it hints there might be something going on between her and Lorca, and I think it's you know, I felt bad for you know, Jason Isaacs and the Lorca character, because it seems like that robs of at least one potential interesting relationship, and they don't seem to be doing much with him apart from having him be this, you know, Ahab-like guy who's all about getting the ship going for battle,
and fortune cookies.
you know, you have a great actor there, and I would love to see some more levels. I'm still assuming we're going to get those, and we're only at the beginning of, you know, we're at the very beginning of the season, but it seems like there just was so much more room to play around with the characters here. That's why I keep going back to, you know, the Klingons, but I every time we go to the Klingons, I just feel like I would much rather be back on the Discovery. I just don't care what's going on with the Klingons. But in my defense, I've been bored with the Klingons since like middle of Next Generation.
Me too.
I just don't care about the Klingons that much.
Mary Chieffo said something, I think in an interview this weekend, where she talked about how they get their lines is they'll get the scripts in English, and then they'll get basically a phonetic script of everything in Klingon, so they know what they're saying. And she's like, it's kind of like learning Shakespeare. It's kind of like acting in Shakespeare. Once you understand the meaning behind this sort of clunky language, it becomes easier to sort of emote and act with people. And it really it feels like Shakespeare, which is kind of a funny thing considering all the Shakespeare references in 6, and how the Klingons are that kind of level of drama. At the same time, it also feels like Shakespeare in the sense of like, can you just get to the fucking point, please?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I have a fix for that, so keep going.
I thought it was. I think the Klingons have the potential to be intriguing, but like the moment when they talked about eating the flesh off of Georgiou's skull, I got angry. Like, right. I haven't been angry at Klingons in a really long time because they haven't really been villains, and I like the fact that they're making them. I like the villainous aspect of them. I like that part of it, but I like the same thing with the pilot. Everything could be everything could be shrunk to like 30% of its size.
Yeah.
I don't. It looks like they're going to be speaking English in the next episode, which sounds helpful to me.
Right.
Yeah, I think between the Klingon language and the makeup they're wearing, it makes it hard to like invest in them or care, or not that we're supposed to care, but I'm having a hard time like with them. I feel like
interested?
The show. Yeah, well, I feel like the show like grinds to a halt when they show up.
Yeah.
And kind of what Jeff said, like I feel like the characters on the Discovery could use like a little room to breathe, and maybe if we weren't spending time with the Klingons, we could have more moments like the ones we have between Michael and Saru, where he's, delivering his sick burns that totally bum her out. Like every time she sees him.
I am continuously tickled by his threat ganglia. Like, I love that they're playing. It's so funny. It's such a brilliant little device. And Doug Jones is just killing it right and left.
Well,
like,
I just love that. Like every time he sees her, he's just like, remember when you killed our captain? Like, like it's you burnt, Michael.
That's right.
Yeah, burnt.
So,
and she's also like still kind of working around her Vulcanness. You can just see her being like, I swear to God, just to the moon, Alice, to the moon.
I want to throw something out here because I found myself as I was watching last night, and Jeff, you brought this up earlier. I feel it hard now to watch Star Trek, and I feel kind of sad about this, without thinking almost constantly of the fandom's reaction to it, and just wishing there was some way to wrap our arms around the fandom or something, and just say, just settle down, just chill, just have a little bit of patience, because there were two things last night. One, it's pretty obvious that the entire Klingon thread is a deeply internal, deep inside Klingon story that doesn't really change, for all the talk about how all these are different Klingons and everything, it doesn't really change anything that we've seen before. And two, with the spore drive and with all the strange things going on the Discovery, it's obvious this is it seems to me to be obvious, this is some sort of little pocket story that will obviously resolve itself to be, it's obvious that not every starship has spore drives, so there is some interesting end to this story that explains why none of that continues on into the future. And I just wish that fans would have patience with the storytellers to let them tell their story, let them do their thing. For all the discussion of how Star Trek is this huge, expansive universe with a million different ways to go, it seems like every different way storytellers have tried to go for the last 15, 20 years, since the beginning of Enterprise, there's been a pretty significant fan reaction against it. And I'm just seeing this, it just seems so obvious that, if you have some faith and, they're obviously telling some story on some clandestine special ship. And if they, you can't expect the marketing for a show to essentially ruin everything. Hey, everybody, don't worry. We're going to show you some crazy stuff, but it's not going to matter in the end because this is, because this is some tragic, ill-fated voyage we're going to tell the story of that will not connect up to anything else. They can't do that. But telling a story like that is really interesting and different and new. And I'm wondering if Star Trek fandom is terminally broken.
I feel like if we're terminally broken, we've always been terminally broken. I mean, this is a perennial reaction to any new Star Trek show. Like, fans rioted in the streets when Next Gen came on the air and didn't have the original cast.
That's true.
Or when they say it, it bugs me, but it also is pretty typical, I find, of the fandom. And I think it's because we're all very protective of this thing that we love, and we don't want the legacy to be diminished by something crappy, for lack of a better word.
Right.
But it is, but it is frustrating to watch a show and like they clearly have a lot of respect for the canon. So, and they've also said many times, like, guys, if it looks like it's unfamiliar, it looks like it doesn't fit, just stick with us. Like, we've got explanations for stuff. Like all that's been said a million times, and to the point where I kind of trust them. And, here's hoping that that's true. So it's like the perspective of the cynicism does kind of bug me. That said, I do understand the frustration that people are feeling at this show's darkness, and how, when Landry says, like, it's time to feed the animals, and this kind of the edginess of Discovery and the Starfleet is we're only 10 years before the original series. Like, it's not like this is Enterprise level where it's really the Wild West and things are not established. There's like the hope of Star Trek seems a bit lost in this show. And I think that is a valid criticism and a reaction to Levy. at this thing. I'm hoping that they will essentially turn it around by the end of the season. And, you know, what we have seen as a really hopeless part of Discovery, or what we've seen as this sort of cynical and more negative side of Starfleet and the Federation, is really kind of just a moment of this particular war. And we're going to come around to the optimism and positivity of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because I like the idea of making it darker, because it frankly feels more realistic to me. But I also, Star Trek to me has always been a haven of positivity and hope, and I don't want it to lose that. So, like I said, I don't know, this is a really kind of inarticulate way of saying this, but the criticism I do understand from the Star Trek fandom is that this is bleak in a way that Star Trek never has been before. And that, you know, that's kind of the thing that makes Star Trek, is its hope and positivity. And to lose that for the sake of good drama, I understand people having problems with that. People pouting the Klingons don't look right can suck on an egg, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I like the part so much where they rescue the colony, because it's this really heroic moment. And I feel like this is just something that's missing from a lot of superhero movies too. Like, we don't get to see them be heroes. So
we get to see them worry and blow stuff up, kind of, is what you're thinking?
Yeah. Like, I was excited to see them like do something good and save some people, even if it was like a little, you know, it's a little on the nose when the little girl's like, who saved us? You know, that sort of thing. But like,
Yeah.
I still liked it. Like, I like that they used the technology for something really noble, like to, you know, to save these people. So it's not just all sinister, you know?
I do want to jump on. Oh, keep going, Alexandra.
I guess part of me, I did like that. But part of me felt it was undermined by the fact that Lorca kept harping with Stamets on the fact that he's like, listen, if we don't have dilithium, we're screwed. And so we know the reason that they saved that colony was because it had dilithium, and because it was, you know, responsible for 40% of the dilithium production, and that's their fleet if they don't have it. So like I liked it, but it was also like, it was just a little undermined by the fact
he played the, you know, the feed of everybody kind of crying and being scared, which is awful.
Right.
And plays on, I mean, I feel like the crew, like, you know, Lorca might be doing it for, you know, business reasons, but the crew really wants to save those people.
Yeah. And I did like the fact that I think a lot of dramas sometimes they're kind of a step away from what's going on, and there's a little bit of a distance from the worst aspects of some of the darkness. I did like the fact that he basically showed his whole crew, this is what we're doing. We're all working hard, we're all doing this, but we're safe on this ship, but this is our message. I did think it was a little much when the little girl was saying, you know, mommy, wake up. But
Right.
But it was kind of like, hey, and it was almost like it was cutting through the normal distance that I think we see in a lot of Star Trek battles, which is, some ship's in trouble and it blows up, and it's meant to provide drama or meant to provide this red shirt moment. But here it was, hey, everybody, this is what we're going for. And he doesn't shy his crew away from the darkness of what they're dealing with. But yeah, I do want to say, though, how badass was that shot when I'm still not sure I understand it, when the Discovery gets there and it seems to be spinning on two axes, like the back is spinning one way and the I guess now we will call it the Jeff Bond pizza cutter description.
I didn't invent that, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to credit it with you anyway.
Credit the internet.
I came up with it.
I just thought that was a spectacular special effects shot, and I guess I'm kind of jumping on Sonia's train here, thinking that it just the elation of seeing that thing do this cool thing while at the same time saving all these people, I thought was fun and a very cool factor. I don't know what it's going to kind of result in ultimately, but I thought it was pretty spectacular to see.
I don't know. It's just I love the introduction of the ship in the previous episode, kind of coming out of the fog to rescue the shuttle. This one, it just I felt like this. was a lot of stuff that they'd come up with to show, where this is the new exciting, thrill-packed visual Star Trek that we couldn't do before, and that's I'm fine with it, but I didn't feel like it had the dramatic impact because of what I was griping about earlier. I felt everything in the story needed more time to really sink in and develop apart from the Klingons eating up a bunch of time, and so that I thought, each of those little stories potentially had some strong dramatic impact and was a good piece of a overall puzzle, but because those pieces weren't kind of large enough in themselves, it didn't feel satisfying to me.
This is, I think, Jeff is kind of hitting on something that, and I feel terrible complaining at this point about this kind of thing, but this is where I wish All Access had filmed this or never aired this with commercials, because I feel like they would have filmed it differently. I feel like the episodes would be paced differently. I know that you can pay $10 and get no commercials, but I think this show would be absolutely brilliant on HBO or Showtime or something like that, where we could get a good 55-minute episode in once every couple of weeks.
Right.
And we didn't have, and it wasn't paced to time out for, frankly, a lot of commercials. They have jam-packed this thing with advertisements, and that's fine. I'm not, it seems like a very silly thing to bitch about, to be upset about. But it's frustrating when I'm seeing, for the first time, I think I said before, this is prestige Star Trek. This is the first time Star Trek's even approached prestige television, and my mouth waters for that kind of thing. And it's frustrating to see it be undermined by these really jarring breaks. And I think it really affects. I feel like it affects the narrative, and it affects the pacing. And I wish we weren't beholden to that. But
I agree 100%. I actually, because of my irritation with commercials, I've paid the $10 for CBS All Access, and you can see the story grind to a halt, go to black, be in black for 2 seconds, and then go back to the story and start back up again. It's, in a weird way, I almost feel like watching it without commercials highlights even more the kind of start and stop fashion of the storytelling, because it literally stops and goes to black. But I want to throw one last thing out here as we close up. I think last night I started feeling the different shape of the season compared to an HBO show or a previous Star Trek show. And what I mean by that is, an HBO show, for me, especially Game of Thrones, it's the unit of storytelling is the entire season. Each episode just connects together, so you get the full satisfaction, the full story, the full climax by watching the entire season. Before, with Star Trek, it was let's say The Next Generation, it was hour. Each episode is its own thing. The story begins, goes, and ends in 1 hour. And I'm wondering if Star Trek, I was feeling in the story that they were trying to tell with the Ripper, I'm almost wanting it to be a little bit more episodic, and I'm wondering if the ideal Star Trek storytelling mode might have been DS9, where they'll have a couple individual episode stories, then they'll have an arc, then they'll have a couple individual episodes, or maybe this is the innovation that everybody forgot, and maybe we shouldn't be forgetting of Enterprise, is they would have, 3 episode arcs, 4 episode arcs, 2 episode arcs. So they'd have these larger serialized stories, but it would not be so expansive that you kind of have to wait for the whole season to get the whole thing. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me wrapping my head around the new Star Trek.
It's strange. I mean, I thought that the last episode stood on its own. It's you had the exploration of the ship, and it was basically about Burnham, fitting in as a crew member, that she's distrusted and she earns people's trust by the end of the episode. So there's a self-contained story there, and the setup of the spore drive seemed like it was, that was going to be a season-long mystery in a way, but given the whole presentation of that idea with Lorca.
Yeah,
so
it really
feel
did.
like the fact that they sort of figured out how to make it work perfectly, or well enough in the very next episode, seemed abrupt to me. And this episode in itself seemed a little, it seemed, we were talking about the commercials. It seemed short. Like, I don't know if it was actually any shorter than any of the previous episodes, but it felt like it was. So right. It seems like in terms of a rhythm of storytelling, it's kind of unclear what this is going to be yet, and how these longer story arcs are going to actually work from episode to episode.
It felt scrambling. It felt like they were like, okay, so we got this, we got the pig, we got Ripper, we got this, and we got the Klingons, and like Cole's in trouble. Now he's on the Shinzo again, and like there might be into this girl, and we're not sure. But anyway, now we're back to Discovery, and they got to jump, but it's not Battlestar Galactica, it's something else. We're in the sun. Oh no, now we got to get to the thing, and now we save the mining colony, and it's great. Like,
All right, Alexandra. I need you to record 2-minute descriptions of every television show I ever watch from here on out.
It's $5 each, but you got it.
Oh, damn it. All right.
The first one's free. I went to college. I need to make a living.
That's true. So does anybody else have anything to say about the 4th episode of Discovery?
No, but it looks like the next episode might, in a weird way, be a bottle show. Because at least some of it takes place in a jail cell. And after these last couple of episodes, I'm really looking forward to a bottle show. I'd like to see an episode where it's just the characters in a small space sitting around talking without a huge amount of visual effects and action. And some of Star Trek's best stories have been bottle shows, and I'm hoping that there's still room for those kinds of stories within this canvas, that not every episode has to be like an epic movie quality. You can still have maybe a smaller character story.
Right. And for those of the uninitiated listeners, a bottle show is where they essentially take the sets that they've created for the show and tell the story only on those. They save money.
It doesn't take place in a bottle. Like,
that's right.
They're not tiny
disappointed.
Yeah. Common misconception.
I was excited to see Wilson Cruz as Dr. Culver, as a my so-called life fan. I was like, it's Ricky! Hello, Ricky!
Where have you been for 25 years? But cool.
And I liked his little banter with the science officer whose name I forget.
Right.
Damn it! Yeah. Well, they're that's his partner, or they're in a relationship. At least that's been pretty publicized. So.
Okay. See.
No.
I haven't read the stuff, so I don't know.
Right. Spoiler alert.
So, Alex, I want to close up the show by talking to you. You have been at. I was going to say North Carolina Comic-Con. New York City Comic-Con.
Sure have.
This weekend. What are some of the cool things or some of the cool stories that you have encountered while being there?
I've seen more advanced screenings for shows that I don't watch this weekend than I think ever in my life. It's been really fun. I've been covering it for Geek and for Comic Book Resources, and so I'm just hitting a bunch of panels and have lucked in. I did obviously my research sort of before I went to see like what was going to what was going to be coming up on the docket. And I was in 2 panels or did 2 press things for 2 shows that I'm really excited about. One is Seth Rogen's new production Future Man, which is going to be dropping on Hulu, I think, in November. And then the other one was for Sci-Fi's Happy, which is an adaptation of a Grant Morrison comic miniseries starring Chris Maloney that just looks utterly bonkers, like a more disturbing Roger Rabbit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Have you guys heard about this at all?
No.
You mean like Cool World?
Actually,
wow, you really know how to scare a guy, Jeff.
You don't want to see it.
I've never seen it. My mom like took one look at it and was like, absolutely not. Because
Your mom did you a favor.
Apparently, I know, right?
Very depressing movie.
Sweet Christmas, that was an awful experience. All right, keep going, Alexandra. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So Happy is the story of this washed up former New York City detective who is just an absolute horror of a human being. He is just the utter self-loathing and hatred and self-destruction could not be dialed more to 11, I guess. Like he's somehow manages to hold on to an apartment, but he is a drunk. He abuses substances, and he's essentially become a hitman to make money. And he on a particular hit, he winds up having a heart attack, and he like talks this prostitute that he's rescued into. He like talks her through how to save him, and then she calls an ambulance, and he gets picked up by EMTs, and he basically holds them at gunpoint, and he's like, "Give me morphine now!" And in this morphine-induced state, we've seen this creature. We've simultaneously to his experience, we've seen this creature's perspective running through New York City looking for help, and you only see his point of view. You don't see what he looks like. And then in the ambulance, this creature flies into the roof, and it's this like kind of funny-looking blue flying unicorn with buck teeth. And its name is Happy, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Happy. I need your help." And of course,
holy smokes.
And of course, Christopher Maloney thinks that he's hallucinating because he's just been shot up with like 20 milligrams of morphine, and he's like popping nitro pills because he's having a heart attack. And he's still holding a gun on the 2 EMTs as the ambulance is racing through New York City. And this blue cartoon is telling him, "I need your help. We have to save Haley." And what turns out to be is that this creature is this little girl named Haley, who we also see in the pilot. It's her imaginary friend. And she gets kidnapped at like what is basically amounts to like a Teletubbies concert. She's kidnapped by this really scary looking guy who looks like kind of a homeless cross between an old school version of Father Christmas and Santa Claus, because it's a Christmas story.
Creepy.
Holy I don't. Wow. That could either be a very new, interesting, more serious direction that sci-fi is going, or I don't even know. I don't even want to speculate what kind of show that's going to be. That sounds crazy. That sounds crazy.
It is.
That sounds flat out insane.
It really, really is. At the same time, it's got, because it's so well acted, like Patton Oswalt voices Happy, and of course you got Chris Maloney, and everyone else in it is phenomenal as well. It really does a good job of setting up its universe and building in some nuance to this really kind of bonkers Watchmen / Tarantino-esque world and this voice. It feels a bit like a fever dream. It's wickedly, wickedly funny. It takes the idea of an anti-hero to the extreme, but at the same time, you feel an intense amount of sympathy for Maloney because his character's name is Nick Sachs, and because you see like he just wants to stop. He's in so much pain, and he just wants to die, and that's how you see like the amount of self-destruction this guy inflicts upon himself is clearly a function of the fact that he's in a lot of pain, and because the character's grounded in that, it really, the pathos is palpable, and it also is really, really funny because you can actually sympathize with this guy. It's not just uncomfortable.
Right.
So it's just such an intriguing premise, and it's such an intriguing another thing I like is the fact that like it's this imaginary friend is not necessarily imaginary. They ground that really early. Because one of my least favorite plot, like narrative devices or tropes, is the idea of having, you know, a character where you don't know if they're a hallucination or not. That drives me insane. I don't think it delivers anything but confusion and frustration. So the fact that they're not totally clear on what Happy is, but you know that he's perceived by more people than just Nick Sachs.
So we are going to have a trailer in our show notes for Happy, so you can have some little tiny taste of what Alex is talking about. So, holy smokes, that was definitely worth the report. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Jeff, one last question. What have you heard on Star Trek Discovery Season 2? Are we getting one? Are they happy? What's it look like?
I have not really heard anything concrete. I mean, other than just internet headlines sounding like that they are beginning discussions about that and that they're hopeful. I think, you know, some of the clickbait things is like, oh my God, we're not going to see, you know, a second season till 2019. That's not that shocking, given that there's obviously going to be episodes going into 2018.
Right.
The second half of the season's going to be next year anyway.
HBO shows and other shows like this usually take a year or two to generate new episodes. So that's as much as I know.
Okay.
It seems like CBS is getting a crap ton of subscriptions off of this, though. So I don't think there's any danger of going one season. It's definitely going to get two.
It seems like the business model at this point, you know, is working for them, but we're early in the season.
I lied. That was not the last question. This is the last question. Where can people find your Jason Isaacs interview?
It's actually in a iPad magazine called Backstory.
Oh no! Shoot.
So it's not necessarily online.
Shut up. Sorry, keep going. I listen to the podcast for that, so I'm happy to see someone that I respect so much working for that fantastic. Okay, keep going. So Backstory magazine.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And is that out yet?
It's just a print interview. You don't get to hear Jason Isaacs talk, but I did Skype him and got to, you know, watch him walking around his apartment or whatever it was with his earbuds on.
So jealous. Sorry, I tried to hold it in.
Is that interview out right now?
It should be. Yeah, I think it's probably live at least this week. If it wasn't last week.
Okay.
Live. Cool. It's just print.
I will try to put a link into it in the show notes. I'm not sure how that works.
I think the idea is that I'll talk to him at the end of the season to because you know, there's very little concrete we could discuss, but he's really funny, and he got on some whole tear about how he loves the original Star Trek and kind of grew up on it, but even he like thinks all the fight scenes in it are ridiculous, and he has this great description of, he was like, you know, one move was like Shatner jumping up in the air and basically hitting an opponent with his ass, knocking him under the ground, which is my favorite Star Trek fight move. So
mine is the mirror.
That way, but he was talking about like fighting the Gorn and like comparing it to HR Puff and stuff.
I'm with him on that. I remember watching Mirror, and there's a scene in which like I think it's the scene in maybe sick bay or something where they're fighting, and like Uhura, Nichelle Nichols, literally like pauses with her back to the camera and then turns around and full on fakes a lunge and just goes, ah! Like, I mean, no provocation whatsoever. No one was even near her. Like, she was just so.
If you watch that fight scene too, I'm pretty sure she's doubled by a man in that scene.
Right.
which actually undermines my assertion that everyone is hotter in the Mirror universe. So
that's right.
I'll have to rewatch that.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys. We appreciate it. We look forward to talking to you next week. Sonia Mansfield, is there anything else that you would like to say as we close out the episode?
No, I'll just say goodbye.
Bye!
The Dorking Out Show is on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, where you can find Chris at Jet Juergens and Sonia at The Sonia Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures at thesoniashow.com and track the slow and creeping progress of Chris's novel and his other hijinks at jetjuergens.com. You can find out more about The Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.